Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk a little bit about video game ratings. Now, longtime viewers may no doubt be aware of the fact that I tend to make fun of various rating systems being used, such as the ESRB or the PEGI rating systems. Because let's be honest, there is something genuinely funny about seeing them rate games that are supposedly kid-friendly that once you look at them aren't actually kid-friendly. But of course you may think that the ESRB and the PEGI rating systems are themselves somewhat low-hanging fruit. So today I'll be talking about a rather amusing and extreme example from the USK rating system, which for those of you who are not aware is the rating system used by Germany. And fun fact, Germany is especially notorious for its efforts at censoring video games, which makes this extreme example all the more hilarious when you actually think about it. But of course it also made it necessary for me to install and then play the German versions of these games just to make sure that the content was still in. And yes, you did hear me say games plural correctly, because today we are going to look at how the USK decided to rate the Tropico Reloaded bundle at USK 6 for ages 6 and up. The Tropico Reloaded bundle, of course, including the original Tropico as well as its expansion pack and Tropico 2 Pirate Cove. Now to start off, let's talk about the original Tropico. And to put it bluntly, if you have played any Tropico game after Tropico 3, then you will have played the original Tropico in some form. But for those of you who are not aware, the basic idea behind the Tropico franchise as a whole is that you are the president of your very own island in the Caribbean, during the very height of the Cold War no less. And thus being the one with all the power in your nation, you can do pretty much whatever you want, for better or worse. This of course includes the ability to play as various historical dictators from the region, as well as the option to be elected as a fascist as part of your rise to power, or even sending out death squads against people just for the sake of it. Not surprisingly, this game received a T14 rating by the ESRB and a PEGI 12 rating. That said, there are of course a few differences in the German version, as there was some censorship taken. For example, you are not allowed to play as certain dictators such as Papa Doc, Augusto Pinochet, or Manuel Noriega. Although mass murderer Fidel Castro, who by the way killed more people than the three previous mentioned dictators combined, was still seen as perfectly fine for no explicable reason. In addition, it should be noted that your options for rising to power also saw some censorship as well. For example, you're no longer allowed to be elected as a fascist. Instead, you're only allowed to be elected as a reactionary instead. But when it comes to the option of sending out death squads against people just for the sake of it,
Jawohl, Presidente.
well, that's just an example of some strong, good old-fashioned German family-friendly values. At least according to the USK, which is the only explanation I can think of for why the USK decided not to censor that and still give the game an age rating for 6 and up. And in case some people are confused right now, let me make it clear that I'm not actually endorsing censorship. I don't believe that the game should have been censored in any way at all, really. I'm just pointing out the double standards and ridiculousness on display here. That said, I would argue that while the content from the original Tropico is indeed spicy for a game rated for ages 6 and up, it, in my opinion, still pales in comparison to the content found in Tropico 2 when you think about it. And on that topic, let's move on to the aforementioned Tropico 2 Pirate Cove, which, as you could probably tell, changes the time period of the franchise from the Cold War to the Age of Sail, turning the player into a pirate king of their own personal private island, and tasking them with enriching themselves by sending out their ships to secure plunder. Now that seems so far so standard, however, to truly understand the spicy nature of this particular game, we have to look at the economic model that plays out on the island itself. As your pirates themselves don't really like doing work, and thus the most work you'll usually see them do is being guards for your own personal palace. Instead, the vast majority of the work carried out on your island is done by the captives, who are forced into it against their will and never actually receive any pay at all for the work they do. In other words, you are relying primarily on slave labor in order to get anything done on the island itself. But wait, there's more, because some of that work includes things like being winches at the local brothel, meaning that sex slaves are actually a core part of the in-game economy. And not only that, there are actually multiple tiers of sex slaves that you can have as well, to satisfy higher ranking pirates in your crew. In other words, it could safely be said with absolutely zero exaggeration that Tropico 2 is a game about sending out pirate ships to secure captives to turn into sex slaves, and then kidnapping professional prostitutes to replace your sex slaves with better sex slaves. Now you may be thinking at this point that surely the USK would have demanded some censorship being taken against this game for some of the spicier content. But alas, that is not the case. The brothels are still brothels, the sex slaves are still sex slaves, and the game was still rated a USK 6 rating for ages 6 and up. Now, some may try to argue that the reason that this game was given such a light rating may be due to the fact that while there is some spicy content here, it occurs behind closed doors where the player can't see it, and therefore, from a strictly visual point of view, the game isn't actually that graphic. That said, the USK is known for giving harsh ratings for games that had touchy subject matter, but weren't actually visually graphic. For example, both DEF CON and Plague Inc. received USK 16 ratings for ages 16 and up, even though the graphic nature of those games occurred behind closed doors where the player couldn't see as well. So with that in mind, it is my opinion that the USK 6 rating for Tropico Reloaded, as well as for Tropico 1 and 2 separately, is the biggest and, in my opinion, funniest misstep of the USK. Of course, should I become aware of an even more extreme example, I would be more than happy to share it with you all here. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.